Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. This is the show where we explore some of the often taboo or more complicated topics, and we get more confident with that fear of putting our foot in it. Now, today I was joined by Alex Williams, and Alex is a registered mental health practitioner and a professional speaker, and we were talking all about mental health. So we were talking about a really insightful take. Like one of the reasons why I love speaking to Alex is because he is real. He isn't into fluffy buzzwords. I have to give you a little bit of, not necessarily an explicit content warning for this one, but we do get a little bit sweary. So if that's not your bag, you may just want to know about that coming into it. But for me, it's about the realism of having a conversation about mental health and how sometimes we are seeking to create environments where we want to push people a bit further or push ourselves a bit further than maybe we could do. And we hold ourselves to expectations that might be unattainable. So it's really awesome talking to Alex, where he helps really understand, like, how as individuals can we start looking at the ways in which we manage our own mental health, and also from an organizational standpoint, how can we create the conditions where people can really make the most of having really good emotional and mental well-being. So Alex's background, he's got over like 20 years, I think, of clinical experience, and he's used to supporting individuals with a diverse range of problems that are negatively impacting their mental health. And he is now on a mission to help provide other people with kind of learning the skills and techniques and things that he wished that he had been taught when he himself had been in a position where he kind of thought it couldn't get any worse. So please welcome this conversation with Alex Williams. He's a fantastic speaker, like I say, keeping it real all the time. And I'm really delighted to be bringing this conversation to you, because for me, it was an absolute joy. So please welcome Alex Williams on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast.
Cool. So how are we doing this? Well, you just fire away and let's have a conversation, I guess.
Yeah, we're just going to have a chat. That's basically it. That's how this works. That's why it's like always recording. At some point, probably about now, is when I'm going to like do an intro. I'll record the intro afterwards.
Yeah.
Because then I always do it that way, because then I'm really buzzing from our conversation and I can talk about it and do a better introduction rather than like, this is Alex, welcome. So yeah, just like we'll have a chat about mental health.
Okay, go for it.
Why we think it's really important, and then
Yes.
you get to just say whatever you want to say, and I'll ask questions depending on what you say. And if you don't say anything interesting, then
just don't bother posting it. That's probably going to be the case, to be honest.
And I know that's not true, because we've already talked about it, and I know it ain't true. But let's start with the first question though. Like, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good, actually. Considering that I've got a nearly 5-month-old daughter, and everyone pretty much said, oh yeah, it's going to be the best time of your life, but good luck catching some sleep. She's actually been all right. I feel like I'm a bragging dad here, but she's and she's probably going to stop sleeping from today, but she's actually been
you've said it.
And she's always got a smile on her face. Not that she needs to have a smile on her face, not that she needs to be pretend she's happy, but like, yeah, I'm good and she's good, and yeah, I'm happy. So content, I would say, which is a good place to be, I think.
Yeah, I think that is a really good place to be. And it's interesting then when you said there around kind of immediately, like, not that she has to be happy. And I kind of think that's one of the things, isn't it? Right. Happiness seems to be this goal that everyone's chasing, as if like it's a constant state that we can be in.
Yeah.
And like, that's not life, is it?
No. And actually, it's such a fleeting emotion. And I think there's and content. I know people talk about content and what is that, and that's going to be different for everyone. But someone said to me, and it was on a podcast, and they were actually interviewing me for the podcast, and they actually said the most inspirational thing, and it was like, happiness is the absence of desire. Ooh. And I was like, ooh, and it just triggered something in me, because it just made me think, oh, that's what I'm experiencing now. Then, and it's not necessarily happiness, but I just feel like it's almost like all individual ambition or drive to do anything is gone. I feel like I have everything, essentially what I need emotionally anyway, and physically. And it was just a really weird but lovely place to be. So now whenever I get these ideas and goals or dreams or aspirations on, I'm like, do I really want to do that? Is that something I actually want to do? And it's not saying that I will never have goals again, are just in a good spot right now where,
Mm.
and you enjoy it and make the most of it. I know full well that around the corner there could be something bad happens, and there probably will be. That's just life, right?
Yeah.
And when you speak about happiness, I always say to people, like, there's just that, there's no destination out there where you're never going to have a bad experience again. But
Yeah.
it's about building that life, isn't it, around you now? So when you do have those falls, you've got something that catches you instead of something that
Yeah.
buries you.
Ooh, are you breaking out all of this
Sorry,
nuggets
it's part of
already?
my
I'm
main
like,
talk. That bit is. I was like, oh, I say that in my talk. So it's not rehearsed. It's not like Jay Shetty, Jay, whatever you want to call him. Sorry. Any fans who listen to Jay Shetty, sorry, but yeah, he's all his stuff's rehearsed, isn't it? He always drops
yeah.
it. It's really annoying. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. No, but that's a really interesting thing. I was thinking there around like, yeah, okay, happiness being the absence of desire. So in kind of like the sense of if you're kind of good where you are and enjoying where you are, you're not
Mm,
really seeking for something else
mm,
to get you to a state like you're in the state that you kind of want to be in already.
yeah, yeah. It's almost like, I mean, I sound like some mindfulness guru, like is it Dave, like someone like Dave, who, but it's like being present, isn't it? It's about being
Yeah.
in the moment, and I think it's which none of us do, no matter how much we say we do. And I think society always has us chasing the next shiny thing, because it often has us believing that where we are now isn't good enough, even if it is. And of course, people aren't in situations which aren't good enough. But I think, it's that when you're in the moment and trying to enjoy it as much as you can, if you're in a moment that's good, even if it's okay,
Yeah.
if you've got your needs met and you're thinking, you know what, I don't feel like I need to do anything right now. It's kind of like, oh, that's nice. And
Yeah.
that's just how I feel right now. And it's something that, in a weird way, what I would say, it's not something I've consciously been aiming for. I just kind of just stumbled across it.
Mm.
Obviously, you're intentional with your life, and you engage in things that matter to you. And I do that, but I just think somehow I just kind of have realized, and probably when I had my daughter, I was like, oh, I just feel really good. This is nice. And I don't feel like I
Yeah.
need to be creating the next business idea or posting all this stuff on social media, doing all the shoulds that a business owner should, doing all the well-being things like the perfect morning routine or the perfect night routine, doing all the going to these weird retreats where apparently people who look like Jesus hold me above and tell me that I'm an amazing man, all this sort of stuff. And again, I'm not trying to knock any of that up, though I will take the piss out of it.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
just
it's
feel
got
like,
its place
what?
for some people, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine. But what for me, I was just like, well, I like my job. I do a few talks now on top of that. I see my mates in the pub. I get to spend time with my daughter. I do a little workout in the morning. I eat food. I sleep. I'm like, watch
Yeah.
stuff on Netflix. I'm just like, that's good for me. That
Yeah.
feels right for me. And I think it's about, if it is a goal to set, it's probably identifying within you what is right for you, and that's by regardless of what the noise around you and society tells you you should be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that when I do my job, as I often keep it simple. I think well-being and mental health get so complicated these days unnecessarily by people who want to sound clever and want to have the latest idea, so they can be famous, probably.
Mm.
um, but actually, mental health, even though it's hard, and mental and emotional health is hard, really the stuff for centuries now has been the same. It's very simple day-to-day stuff, that we can hopefully all do to an extent. It's harder for some than others because
Yeah.
of privilege and deprivation, poverty, and that, but it's still all the same stuff. It's just
Yeah.
finding our way to make sure we meet those needs, really.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the reasons why, for me, it really resonated and I wanted to get you on the podcast so that people could hear you talk about it. Because exactly for that reason, there are so many people telling everybody, like, do all of these things and like your life's going to be better. And it's kind
Mm.
of like, you can't promise that to anybody.
No.
Like just adding more things to people's list of shit to do
Yeah.
isn't necessarily helpful. So for some people that's really helpful. Some people want a clear direction, they want to be given those things, and those things will make an impact and a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
But also there are other people out there who are just kind of like, I feeling like I always have to be doing something more, and just being given that opportunity to be like, okay, but what's right now?
Yeah.
What have you got that is good for you, and
Mm.
what do you need
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
think about that, and then you can always add more on, like if you get those
Exactly.
things nailed.
Yeah.
And hearing you talk then, it really reminded me, I know I have a lot of people kind of from HR and leadership positions listening to this, and we have this kind of, in corporate environments, this like there's this phenomenon called super chickens, right, which is where we're so driven on top talent, right? We've got to bring our top talent in, and we have to create people that are just totally productive and really on their game all of the time. And this called super chickens phenomenon is like, if you have like the highest performing, like greatest egg laying, offspring producing chickens, they kill each other,
Yeah.
right? Because you've bred super chickens that are absolutely hell-bent on doing one thing, and it's not healthy.
No.
And actually, how are we creating space where people who want to go down that track can push themselves, because they've got other things that are fixed in their life that are keeping them stable, like their
Mm.
foundation, like you were saying, like the foundation for optimum
Yeah.
well-being is sorted, they
Yeah.
can push. And for everybody else who either doesn't want to or isn't in a position to be able to,
Yeah.
can we just be all okay, like just being really average, like what
Yeah.
the world would class as being average, which actually would probably is just saying like content.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
just be all right being content?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think in some point over the last, especially in the rise of Instagram and TikTok and stuff, like like entrepreneur, the world of being an entrepreneur and a successful businessman has somehow merged into the world of mental health and well-being. So
Mm,
now we're looking at metrics such as productivity and mental health and merging them together. And it's like, is obviously we want to be productive. We want to feel like we're doing something that matters to us in a meaningful way. But is productivity really something we should be measuring as terms of mental health, of some good mental health? You know, of course, if stuff's going on and people can't function to their jobs, yes, but like we're all different, right? The
yeah,
productivity is going to be different for all of us. And I think somewhere along the line, yeah, we're now that thing that it was super chickens, wasn't it?
super
You said
chickens, yeah,
it's like interesting because like literally, okay, so say we had, I can't remember the names, but say oh yeah, Elon Musk and the guy who runs Amazon and I don't know, Stephen Bartlett, you know, Darius CEO, all these people who are like successful
I
entrepreneurs.
tell it, there's a dinner party I don't want to go
I
to.
know, and I'm like, but they're and like, but now we're like, are they people you actually want to be like, or
Yeah,
do you just, you know? And I don't think many people do, but we almost have these people or speakers who never got to their level, but think they know what these people have done to get to that level, right? Come and do talks and do well-being days and stuff. Oh, you should do this, you should do that, do this, and that, thinking they're helping people, but they're probably not. Like, you know, and there might be some helpful things, you know, like Stephen Bartlett says some good stuff, which he's probably got from other people, which most of us do. But like
yeah,
you know, these aren't probably people we should be aspiring to be when it comes to happiness, contentment, well-being, you know, mental, emotional health. I think,
mm,
yes, okay, if you want to like work ridiculous hours and earn millions of pounds, that's great. And yes, you may get some happiness from that. And yes, okay, having money in the banks removes so many stresses from your life
totally.
that mean tackling any mental or emotional health problems or physical health problems, in fact, much easier. You don't, if you're not having to worry about food on the table or a roof over your head, brilliant. You know, that makes things easier. But for the rest of us, we probably don't need to do that. Yet we seem to put these people and think they're the happiest and best and healthiest people around the world when they're probably not. The
Yeah,
guy reading self, I bet you, and this is one realization I had probably, is that I used to think that the people reading personal development stuff, always setting new goals, always stepping out the comfort zone, were the happiest. I actually think the people who were sitting in a pub on a Friday night just chatting to their mates without a care in the world, talking about their interests, are the happiest. They're not trying to be better to pursue this
yeah,
next goal. They're just like, well, this is who I am. This is what I like, and I enjoy it. And I don't
yeah,
care if no one else likes that. It's just that's me. As long as it's
yeah.
legal within
I
reason.
mean, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, good catch.
yeah,
Actually, and as you were saying that, like, what really stood out for me then is like, as a bit of a build, is like anybody who thinks that like Stephen Bartlett, as the example, is doing that on his own.
yeah,
Come on, like he's
mm,
got an army of people
yeah,
that are doing all of this stuff for him.
yeah.
And quite rightly so, because you cannot get that level of I guess outreach, engagement, success. Like none of that comes through individual pursuit
No,
at all.
no,
And yet to kind of place all of that on this, well, if that one person can do it, I should be able to do it.
Exactly.
Like, really? Do you think? And I know, I mean, I don't follow Stephen Bartlett's work so closely, but I kind of get the impression he probably is very open about the fact that he's not doing that on his own. I
Mm.
can't imagine he's trying to hide it. But I would also think he's probably not talking about it enough, like giving the flowers to the people around him who are like really doing the graft.
Yeah.
I wonder what it feels like to work in that team.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know, are they happy?
yeah, yeah, and I'm hopeful that they are. You'd hope,
Yeah.
of course, he's going to paint a picture that everything's rose, and I'm sure not everything's perfect. But I like to think, given the amount of guests, he has, and all the well-being stuff he does, he's hopefully takes
Yeah.
some of the good stuff, even though there's a lot of crap from the people he does, the guests he does get, but takes that and hopefully incorporates it into his organization or whatever.
Yeah.
But you're so right, and I think this is one of the problems I find with well-being. I talk about it, personal
Mm.
responsibility, down to you to take action, to move your life in the direction you want to go to. It is important, but I do think there's an overemphasis on responsibility and individuals when it comes to like emotional and mental well-being, because we are all products of our environment. We're products of us, there's our community, the society around us. You look at social determinants of health, and you can see that those who have access to um, better education, healthcare, etc., 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 do better.
Mhm.
Generally. So we are product. We have to be aware that it's not. You can work your ass off, but if for some of us, it's going to be like doing it on concrete. So we've got sturdy base underneath us. Some of us, it's like quicksand,
Yeah.
and it's being aware of that. And I think sometimes we need to kind of balance the books a little bit. Like, yes, okay, we know that, yes, like you said, Stephen Bartlett, amazing individuals, done loads for himself, but actually he couldn't have done that without the people around him.
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl, who's someone I literally worship the hell out of because of like his book and how it transformed my life. But if you look into his story, he had loads of people around him, obviously in it, they were all going through hell. But then afterwards, he had loads of support. He was struggling. He had people around him to support him to become the person he become.
Mm.
And it's really important. I think we balance that and go, well, actually, okay, yes, you need to go and do the work, whatever the fuck that is,
Yeah.
but you need good people around you to support you to do it. It's about having those people around you to kind of put a hand on the shoulder and say, come on, we can do this with you, whether that's just good people, family, friends, or whether you need to pay for a therapist to coach or just be part of some kind of group or whatever. We need good people. So when it's not just about the individual, what they can do, it's about what we can do for the individual. So in HR and organizations like that, what can we do to support the individual as best they can? Yes, okay, you're going to get people who don't take that help. That's fine. We
Yeah.
don't need to dismiss them and say, oh, they just need to work harder. Maybe they're just not at that stage where they want to, be moving forward. That's okay. We need to be okay with that as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
what can we do to support them as best they can to not be the best they can be, but to help them be a little bit better than where they are right now?
Mm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of comes back to that, like, basic kind of principles is like meet people where they are.
yeah,
And some people need a little bit of help, a little bit of community, a little bit of support, and some
yeah,
people need an absolute ton.
yeah,
And and recognizing the role that we can play, I guess, for ourselves, like you said, like personal responsibility, absolutely. So recognizing, like, am I setting expectations and goals for myself that like are absolutely going to be unachievable, and therefore I'm constantly going to be like thinking I'm not good enough,
yeah,
and do I need some help to readjust that? Or am I, a CEO in an organization and I'm set the parameters of what my culture is, and I'm just making it a place where I'm making everybody else's life really difficult
mm,
to come to work, because, like, coming back to productivity, I've got really unrealistic measures of productivity because I'm totally focused on the output of widgets, and I'm not really thinking about the
mm,
fact that I've got a team of people trying to produce that many widgets,
yeah,
and they don't have time for a toilet break, let alone
yeah,
a lunch break, let alone, anything else. So
yeah.
it's like, the kind of the extremes there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think I mean, I talk a lot about resilience, and I think we have this idea of resilience of just plowing on through no matter what. And I think that's
Mm.
often what's taught. Like, people need to be more resilient. Yes, okay, we've got this goal to achieve, and they need to reach that target. But is that chart? My idea of resilience really isn't about plowing on through regardless. It's like giving yourself what you need so you can, carry on. And it's like, okay, well, if someone say say they've got to reach this mark, say 100, they've got to get 100 of so and so things done.
Mm,
They've only got the time to do 80 realistically. You keep adding that up, they're just going to be burning
yeah,
themselves out essentially. So it's like, what can we give people? What do they need so they can actually not necessarily reach that target? So maybe we need to lower the target. Maybe it's what do they need to have more rest? Do they need to have be time to do the
yeah,
things they want to do? There's so much stuff you can look at it. You have to look at it from an individual's basis, but like we have to find what, when it comes to resilience, is what do we need so we can continue long term, and it needs to be a long term perspective. Resilience isn't just powering on through all the time. It's like,
yeah,
okay, sometimes resilience is actually I need to stop so I don't get sick and I can carry on moving forward. And I
yeah,
think in companies we need to look at that. How can we make sure our people feel supported as best they can? And equally, when I say that, I don't mean we all have to become therapists, because sometimes I think we put too much emphasis on these organizations that you're meant to be everything. You get these
everything.
people
Yeah,
say, well, I think I read some stat that most people, something like the thing, is it something about they find the workplace or something around the workplace gives them the most stress or has the biggest impact on their mental health, or it's like the leaders have the biggest impact on their mental health or whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, but this is work. They're not supposed to be your therapist. They're not supposed to be your family, your loved ones. They're
yeah,
your boss. And yes, okay, they need to treat you with respect. They need to be supportive. They need to treat with dignity. They need to help you to meet your needs as best you can within the work environment, so you can do the job as best you can, depending on what's going on for you around
mm,
the time. But some of the stuff I see people put out there about what company work culture should be doing, I'm like, seriously, really? I don't think anyone has that anywhere, let alone what you expect in the
yeah.
workplace. So I think equally we have to lower that expectation slightly.
That's really interesting to me, because immediately I'm kind of thinking about, like, I spent, many years working in HR, and it did feel a lot of times that we became employee therapists,
Mm,
as in, and the expectation was as well, like when it comes to, like, there's a lot of transacting of people related processes,
mm,
right? And there would always be this kind of thought around, like, oh, well, it's people related, HR will do it.
yeah.
And it's kind of like, is that HR's role? Is it, oh, this involves people, so then give it to it. It's almost like saying, well, oh, we're going to give our new finance strategy, sorry, our new sales strategy to the finance team
Mm,
because it's numbers, right? And
yeah.
it's like, well, are your finance people also going to be your salespeople? No, they're not. Different skill set. And it's kind of one of those, like, oh, is this right? And then you do find, and I guess maybe this also comes back to that, um knowing ourselves a bit more,
Mm,
like, you want to help, right? we
yeah.
don't we don't like the idea of leaving people suffering. Like, we want to
Yeah.
we want to help, so we take on too much. And then we've got layers of people where we've got employees that are burning out and having their own problems, sharing it with other employees who then start to burn out because they're taking on everybody else's problems
Yeah.
without knowing how to, like, okay, what role does, like, signposting play in this, about what is my professional capacity limit
Yeah.
here. And
Yes.
it's something that really stood out to me. I remember doing, like, coach training. There's a lot of work that goes into knowing, like,
Mm,
what is coaching, what is therapy, and where does that
yeah.
change.
Yeah.
And you're not, one of them you're qualified to do, and the other one you're not qualified to do.
Yes.
And know the difference,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you're right. And I think it's and I think it does, like you said, we want to help people, don't we? And I know this, and I think some often people, I don't know if it's the same with HR, I imagine it is, but I know in the helping people kind of workspace, especially when it comes to just helping people to meet their needs, I think it does attract kind of that people pleaser kind of
Mm,
person, where we tend to put other people's needs before our own,
yeah,
and we try to help people solve their problems or solve their problems for them. Um, but like you said so well, like we have, it does become to, where's that boundary, where's the line where literally this is out of my remit now, this is out of, it's not like you can't be there and say, but when is it like I need to ask someone else for help,
yeah,
I need to signpost to this service, I need to signpost to that. And I think sometimes I often think when it comes to mental health and well-being organizations and stuff like that, how they approach this, it's like, yes, okay, you want an open door essentially, where if someone's got issues, you want to know they can come to you and go, look, I need to talk about this. But also you want to have a few doors open for them to send
yeah,
people down. And something that's a bit different, but not something that's kind of tick boxy, like, oh, here, we'll send you to this organization that's going to give you 6 sessions of CBT online, which can be helpful for some, but for many, it's just like very, It's not very personal.
Mm.
You want to ask that person, what do you feel you need? And again, you could end up with multitude of services, but having some flexibility in what you offer people. But yeah, I think we need to just tone things down a bit and just say, look, okay, you're the boss or you're leader here. You don't need to solve this all on your own. You don't need to just understand everything about mental and emotional health. You don't need to understand all this. Just be a listener,
Yeah.
be supportive, try to be, you're going to be judgmental. I hate it when people say non-judgmental, because we're all judgmental. Like I often see
Yeah.
people and I'm like, yeah, won't openly be like, you twat, or what are you doing to someone, but I'll be like, inside I'll be like, oh yeah, but then in checking that, but try to not to be openly judgmental with people. Just try to be understanding, and just say, yeah, that sounds hard, what can we do to support you here? Have you thought about this? Have you
Mm.
thought about that? Again, I don't know how much all this costs, because I work in public health with all my, I work in NHS for all my one-to-one stuff, because I believe that mental and emotional support should be, even though it's not free, taxes pay for it, I think it should be accessible to all. So I do that. But
Yeah.
I think within organisations, it's looking at that. And
And it is a cost, right? Let's
yeah,
not beat around the bush. And
mm,
it's a cost in terms of, as an employer, it costs to have service provisions available to your people. Like,
mm,
a lot of times, I think you can get these bundled in through like benefits systems and things. So for bigger organizations, they will likely have a benefits suite, so
mm,
an insurance provider who will
yeah,
put support in place, which can be very helpful. And for a lot of smaller organizations, if you want to give that same level of support,
yeah,
it can mean actually thinking, yeah, we need to pay to help this person. But then back to that point, is that an investment that's worth making to help an individual who is contributing to your organization? And again, you
mm,
like you said, the long game, like in the long term, is this an investment we can make now
yeah,
because we know it's going to build trust and help our employment relationship,
yeah,
so that they will be the kind of thriving employee for us that we want them to be,
yeah,
and they'll tell people how great we are because we're
yeah,
supporting them with the things that
mm,
they need support with, because we're doing the right thing by the people that
yeah,
contribute. um and there was, oh god, and this is why my menopause brains kicked in, because as you were saying that, there was something, there was two costs, because I was thinking actually it's the time cost as well, right?
yeah,
Like, it's not just a financial cost. Like, as a people manager, if you're a supervisor or team leader or something, like, it takes time to sit
yeah,
down and have conversations with your people,
mm,
right? You can't fit all of these things into like a 5 minute quick, how you doing, yeah, great,
yeah, yeah. Like, and this is interesting, because my clinical work in the NHS is like I work within two GP surgeries, and I love it, to be honest. But there's some people who still believe that they want us to work like the GPs do, see people in 10 minutes, and we're like, no, we give
Mm,
people an hour. Yes, we might not cover everything now, but we give people the opportunity to open up and do proper assessment, and we keep seeing them. We see people multiple times, many of them, but you can't do that in 10 minutes. Yeah, like often people come in, you see what's going on, you break the ice a little bit, just kind of make people feel comfortable, and then you go into stuff. But yeah, 10 minutes isn't going to cut it.
yeah.
But I sometimes wonder with organizations, I know, like, I mean, I do, as a speaker, I go into some of these organizations and I do my keynote and do a little bit of talk on resilience and mental health. But I sometimes wonder why, and again, it might be a cost thing, but I think if you were thinking long term, surely it would save money. Why they don't employ like mental health professionals, or, people with experience working at, to work within the organization,
Mm,
like solely, or within if you're a bunch of small companies, for example, like you got someone in to work between you who was available for appointments to maybe do some training, and stuff like that. I often I'm sure there are organizations out there that do that, but I know a lot, and maybe it's because it's the conservative Tory way, that we just outsource stuff to other people who are going to charge us too much money for shit services. But like, I sometimes think, why don't you just employ your own? You look at, if you could match what the people are earning in the NHS, um, which isn't bad, and you get some good benefits, obviously, if you work,
mm.
pension, stuff like that, then I don't think it's the cost long term. I think it would save you lots of money, providing you get a good person, of course. I know that just because you've got a mental health professional doesn't mean they're good at the job.
Well,
So I hear
this
some horror stories as well.
Yeah, this is one of the things actually, as you were saying that, I was like, I think this is kind of the thinking behind. I know a lot of employees who have brought on and trained existing people to be mental health first aiders,
Mm,
which I've always kind of, I'm really divided on whether that's a good idea or not, because I
mm,
think in principle it sounds like a brilliant idea, like having people that you who get training and you can go to them and speak to them. Like it sounds like it's moving towards what you're suggesting. But then I also worry, like, because these people aren't trained professionals,
Mm.
and it comes back to that, like people knowing the remit and the boundaries of like how much do we expect people to take on simply as another one human to another?
Mm.
Is that realistic? And where do they go? And how do we hold that for everybody? Like
Well,
that's a
it's
lot.
I share the same concerns, and I feel for mental health first aiders because I think I know a few, and they're really motivated, inspired, driven to help people. But like, let's be honest, like 2 days, 3 days mental health first aid training or whatever a week doesn't cut it. It does. You're not a professional who's trained, and this isn't me knocking them. You can be supportive, but it's like I think having them is massively important, but it feels like it's almost like a tick box for a lot of organizations. Oh, we have a mental health first aider. Yes, we do lots of people's mental health. And yes, some of them are going to be amazing, but you're rightly so. What happens if someone comes in and says, someone who's been through a world of trauma, um, they had some like maladaptive coping mechanisms like significant self-harm, maybe they used to take overdoses, stuff like that. And then they've been all right, they're doing well in their job, but then something happens that, sets them off on the kind of downward spiral, and they come in and they suddenly just open up and say, by the way, I've just taken an overdose.
Mm,
Um, and then they say to this person, oh, and you say that, sorry, mental health first, they says, oh no, God, we need to get you to hospital, and they go, oh, I don't really want to go to hospital. I just want to die. And these are real, very real conversations I've had throughout my career with people. That's traumatic for the
yeah,
mental health first aid. But then what do they do? That you can't force someone, and then and you might go, well, I've got to call an ambulance and stuff like
yeah,
that. It can be really tricky. Now, of course, that's like the high end of stuff that might happen. There's also going to be lots of things that are really easily be manageable. But I think we have to be aware that sometimes these things might happen.
mm,
And is it really fair to, I could use the word burden, because I don't like the word burden,
yeah,
but I'm just going to use, but burden someone with that pressure and that stress, because then they go home with that. And then, like you say, who do they talk to about it? Because
yeah,
we know that people can be traumatized by, by
yeah.
hearing people's trauma stories, by witnessing other people's trauma and stuff like that. So it's like, I think we have to be really careful and mindful. I mean, in a way, I'm hardened to it, not to the sense where I'm not compassionate, but you kind of do get used to that. I've done it 20
Mm,
years. I get used to hearing some stuff. And of course, you hear something like bloody hell, but you kind of learn how to compartmentalize it. When
yeah,
you're struggling, who to go to, blah, blah, blah. But I don't necessarily feel like mental health first aiders necessarily do. And maybe
yeah.
they do, So I don't want to poo-poo mental health first aid, because I think it's great. I
No,
think it's the things there, but I don't think it does what it says on the tin or
yeah.
what people think it should do. And actually, from what I understand, I don't think the data is very supportive of it anyway, in the terms of what the outcomes they are expecting from it anyway.
Mm. Well, I
So
think for me, it comes back to your original point around understanding that it's one tool, but it's
yeah,
not the tick box of like,
yeah,
we need to do something for mental health. Oh, we've got mental health first aiders sorted.
yeah,
Like, it's one way, but it's got its limitations. And those
mm,
limitations really, as you've just kind of called out, they're quite low level.
yeah,
Like it's for day to day, kind of human to human interaction where someone just needs someone.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
I can totally see where it has that place, but actually, yeah, anything more significant. If I think as well, like the landscape of the world right now, and
Mm,
I spend a lot of time in organizations asking leaders, like there are multiple genocides happening around the world right now.
mm,
Are you having those conversations in your workplaces about how are people coping?
yeah,
Because even if they're not directly impacted, and many people are, like there's a lot of horror to be
yeah.
witnessed, and people are carrying that, and people have quite divisive opinions on that as well.
Mm.
So if I'm now going to go to a mental health first aider and say like, there are dead babies in my social media feed and I'm really traumatized by this, like where does that person go with that?
Exactly, exactly.
No.
And I mean, we are, aren't we? There's probably there's lots of benefits to social media in a sense of, broadening our social networks and I guess education stuff. But like this day and age, with so much, we are literally exposed to. I'm not gonna. I think the word trauma is massively overused. We're exposed to very stressful stuff
Yeah,
a lot more than we ever used to be, and it can be, and people can bring that into work. And also, we work in a much more diverse culture than we've ever done. So people are
yeah,
coming in who are probably, watching the stuff in the news, in Gaza who have got probably people they know who might be out there who they share the same
Yeah.
religion, faith, and they're like, oh my God, this is my people who have been treated like this. This is
Yeah.
disgusting. And in this country right now, you look at what's happening with the trans community, and
Yeah.
you've got your very own prime minister literally basically saying the world, essentially saying, oh, this country's not safe for you. We want to
Yeah.
get the human rights, act changed. So,
Yeah.
screw
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And you're like thinking, what?
Yeah.
This is meant to be what kind of world are we living in right
Yeah.
now? So like
Exactly.
it's a scare, yes, okay, there's lots of privilege that comes with being in this country. We are not in a war as such, but it's not very safe as well, is it, for a lot of
Yeah.
people? So
Exactly. And that's when we think back to the creation of workplace culture,
mm,
like these are the conversations that humans are having, because these
mm,
are the experiences that humans are
yeah,
having. And it's not necessarily saying that there needs to always be a platform to have these conversations all of the time, but it's
mm,
about knowing that, like, your people, like, that it's not like a magic archway that you walk through on the way into work, and all of your fears and insecurities and dilemmas and troubles and traumas are just
yeah,
wiped clean for the 8 hours you're going to sit at your desk, and then you pick them back up on the way out. It's
yeah.
like, don't work that way.
No, no,
um and yeah, I think we underestimate sometimes the gravity. And actually, coming back to a point that you made really early on as well, around like the intersectional approach in all of that, in that we are all like combinations of all of the different parts of our identity, and
yeah,
that then means that our experiences are really different.
yeah,
So, yeah, some people have got a really that solid concrete foundation. For some people it's quicksand, and sometimes it's something in between, and it shifts and
yeah,
it shapes depending on the circumstances or the situation we find ourselves in. So
yeah,
sometimes we might be really used to having a concrete foundation, and we're presented with something that takes us really off guard because we've never stood on quicksand before,
yeah,
and all of a sudden it feels like everything's falling, which would feel really different in any other circumstance. And it's
yeah.
about how are we really paying attention to those things as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. And as I say, I think it's very important to treat everyone as an individual, and to not think just because you provide this, then that everyone would be okay. And again, that's in a way, it's almost an impossible task because we are all individual. But I think what it's really important to remember that everyone really wants to be treated and respected for who they are. That's
Mm.
not hard, in my opinion. I think regardless of what sex, gender, culture you are, it's about treating people for who they are. And we're also recognizing that all humans, and we are all humans, that we all have the same basic and emotional needs. And
Yeah.
that it doesn't matter who you are and regardless of all that stuff, we all have the same stuff. And I think when we realize that, we can actually kind of hopefully have a bit more compassion and empathy for the person and say that okay, but a sense of, if someone is struggling to pay their bills, hasn't got a roof over their head, they've probably got lack of control, feel like that sense of control over their life, which is a massive, important emotional need. So if you were in that situation, you'd feel the same.
Mhm.
If you what's part, and also what other situations where you feel like you haven't got control over your life. If you can put yourself in that position, you go, oh yeah, I know what that's like. That's awful.
Yeah.
Like say for instance, if anyone's been through that, had been dumped, had their heart broken, they're thinking, oh my God, this person's not here anymore. Oh, I need them back or whatever like this. That sense of control is gone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Also that sense of the emotional intimacy, all that sort of stuff. So it's like, we all have those same needs, and it's about recognizing that, I think.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I think that was the really kind of curious point there as well, around like how willing and able are we to literally put ourselves in someone else's shoes and remember,
Yeah,
like, we may have felt that before, and if we haven't felt that before, we can probably think about, well, how would it feel?
yeah,
And but then for me, this is kind of another reason why, like, having representation is really important, especially like at leadership level, because actually, like, we are limited, aren't we, by our own experiences.
yes,
So we can only ever empathize as far as, like, our biases, essentially, or our perspectives will allow us to.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's about, or how are we, if I'm trying to create something or understand something, how am I bringing more people in who see the world differently to me, to challenge that a bit, so I can go, okay, I thought this, this mental health service we're going to roll out for everybody was going to be really brilliant for everybody because I think it's amazing. And then
yeah.
you're going to have other people going, yeah, like,
I know.
no.
Well, if this is it, isn't it? I think, and we in the well-being mental health space. I think we have a mass of people with lived experience, and it's good that they're having the conversation. They think, well, this worked for me, therefore I'm going to sell this, and it's going to work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, well, it's because you're not working
Yeah,
hard
yeah,
enough.
you're the problem.
Yeah, and you're like, no, that's not how it works. Like, honestly, if I'd made a product on like what my recovery journey was and what everything I went through, I wouldn't sell it because it'd be shit. It'd be like literally hide in your room for 6 months and deeply reflect on all the stuff you went through, then realize that you stopped living your life and actually you just needed to go out and do what the fuck you wanted and just be okay with that and like who you are. And that's sort of how it would look. But you wouldn't
Yeah.
sell that as a product because it's like, well, we need to do this meditation, we need to do this and that. And but I do think you're right. We need to, when we step out from our own world and ask, is this going to help that person? Is this going to help that person? And this is why when I talk about this stuff, I really come back to the very basics. I literally, I think we can get hooked on modalities and interventions and find what's the right one. And of course, we want to know that, especially I think when we get like people who are properly traumatized. I think, there's certain interventions people might need to help them with like processing of those traumatic memories. But I think really when it comes to well-being, it's the same stuff we've done for years. And that's what I always try and talk about. It's about having a better, improving the relationship with yourself, being compassionate and kind to yourself rather than giving yourself a hard time for having a hard time. It is about taking responsibility in a sense of like, what can I do today to move the needle in the right direction? Simple as that. What can I do to make my life a little bit better or help myself meet my needs a bit better? And then it's like just being patient. Like,
Mm.
we the problem, and it's a massive problem, is that we look for quick fixes. We don't give anything a chance these days. Like,
Yeah.
and equally we can be guilty of blindly following stuff that we think's working, and because we don't want to be a fool and admit actually this isn't really helping, we just keep doing it. And I'm not going to talk about certain sectors of the coaching well-being industry, but people have certain beliefs who just like, you're like, that you can see you're miserable behind those happy smiley faces you're putting on social media, but you can't be seen to be miserable. But I think we look for quick fixes, so we need to realize that actually this stuff takes time. It's actually about how you show up each day, not like your best every day, but doing what you
Mm-hmm.
can, even if that's doing nothing, but not giving yourself a hard time for doing nothing.
Yeah.
And when we keep doing those things over and over and over again, our life tends to start looking better. Doesn't mean it's always going to be good, because you see what's happening in society now. We could have a flood right now. Your house could get flooded and be like, fuck.
Yeah.
But it's like when you do those things, you do end up building a relatively good life for yourself. So
Yeah. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying there, like I'm a really visual person, right? So I'm
yeah,
kind of imagining like I've got this kind of grid laid out in front of me, and
yeah,
I'm thinking, what are all the elements that I need to have a really good, strong foundation of mental health? And I put them all out on this grid.
yeah,
And how am I working on each of those little things
yeah,
to keep that foundation solid? So
yeah,
rather than just thinking like, oh yeah, like having a partner is really important to me, and I'm going to put all of my energy there
yeah,
and just neglect everything else on the grid.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, how am I looking at all of my needs
yes,
and thinking about them all, and not necessarily trying to achieve like 10 out of 10 on everything, but like thinking literally what's a good batting average for me to have here,
yeah,
and like to be okay.
yeah,
And then on the days that I might hit a 7 or a 9, then
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
And but if I get a 4, I know four's good.
Yeah, and you're right, and I think a needs-based approach is the best way. Emotional needs, there's loads of different models. I quite like the human givens model around emotional health. It's just a
So what
couple
it
of
is again,
guys who just
sorry.
create the human. I don't really know too much about it. They're two guys. I can't remember. They just create the human givens. It's their idea of how mental health and how it works. Again, I think there's a bit of it's pretty good, but again, there's probably some nonsense in it. But there is in every modality, to be
So
honest.
human givens.
Yeah, the human givens approach is quite good. So you look at their emotion. They talk about emotional needs, and also like what we already have within us to kind of combat those needs. But I think um, having a needs-based approach is best, just exactly like you said, and focusing on what's going on in our life in regards to those needs. What one do we feel we need to be working on now? How can we move the needle in that one, knowing that some of the others will slip, but that's okay, and we can always turn our attention. And I think for me, like I find that a much better way to approach, because you can't. I think there's this idea that we can have all these plates spin, and we can
Mm,
have everything sorted and have this amazing relationship, this amazing job, our health be perfect, everything. But I don't think, again, it might sound negative, but I don't think that's realistic. I think sometimes things have to slip to work on other things. It's identifying what's really matters to you. Like having my little girl, 5-month-old girl, literally put everything in perspective. She's number one. So
Yeah.
like, if I'm doing anything that's taking me away from her, no, that can wait. And that might mean that, yes, I'm not going to be I've turned down loads of talks this part of the year because I was like, no, I don't want to be working extra hours to do that. I want to be there for her because I know that for her development, and I know that for any parent who may listen to this, and I actually said this and I felt it's one of the most profound moments. Again, I said on the podcast recently, accidentally didn't realize it, but if all the wounded adults who are struggling with their mental health, if I've ever asked them what they needed as a kid or what they wanted from their parents as a kid, none of them have ever said, oh, I wish that my dad or my mum was earning more money. I wish they worked more hours.
Mm,
They just want you to be there. And knowing that means that right now, when I'm thinking, oh, I really like to maybe write this new talk because I've got this great idea. I'm like, well, no, I can, if that's going to eat into my time, my little girl, then no, and
yeah.
yes, okay, she also, it will be about returning to some of that stuff. But the best thing you can do for me is like be present with my daughter. And for me, that's
Mm,
my most important need that, that ticks so many of my emotional needs, that feeling like that community, that emotional intimacy, that meaning, purpose, that sort of stuff. It just brings so much to my life, and it's really finding that thing in your life, not like a purpose you have to find it, which sometimes these spiritual gurus would tell you, because I think that can put a lot of pressure on people. Like there's actually nothing wrong with changing your mind all the time and just being curious to new ideas and giving them a go. And
yeah.
actually there's nothing wrong with just investing in your health, having some good times and spending time with people you enjoy. That's absolutely fine, and that in
Yeah.
itself is purpose.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
finding those things, whatever they are, no matter how small they are, even if it's going to watch a football team in a weekend, that's fine. And it's about finding that and just
Yeah.
investing in those, like you say, those little bits, those
Yeah.
boxes or whatever.
Yeah. And
See
what
how
I'm
things go.
hearing there as well is like recognizing those things don't have to be fixed.
No,
Like you can switch that grid out as often as you like. And so I'm hearing as well, like for you, you're like, I'm just prioritizing
yeah,
my little girl right now.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
come when she's like in her teenage years, she ain't gonna want to hang out with you. Like, in the
No.
nicest possible. I hate to break it to you, I was a teenage girl myself.
Yeah,
Like it's the uncoolest thing. So at the moment, you've got this finite time of like, I'm
I
gonna make
know.
the most of it, and then
No,
she's gonna develop her own personality and attitude, and then that's something else you're gonna have to manage.
exactly.
And that might shift how much time
I
and
know.
attention you want to spend.
Yeah, I'll be like, I'm going into my office. I won't be back for another week.
Yeah, yeah. And that's okay though, right? Like
Okay.
because you get to choose,
Yeah,
like you say, other factors permitting, there might
yeah,
come a time where you're like, actually, I have got to prioritize earning money, or I have got to prioritize these things.
mm,
And those are balances
yeah,
because it's all a balance, isn't it? But
yeah,
how are you kind of thinking about what do I need in this moment and
yeah.
allowing to be knowing that I can change it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And trying to just trying to just cut out the noise
Mm,
from the world around you. That's again, going back to social media and the downfall. You don't have to go far to find someone posing in front of a Lamborghini telling you how to make six figures in your business, or how they've got the secret to healing trauma, or this and that. Most of these people are just selling bullshit. Like,
mm,
they're just there to make money, and unfortunately we live in that kind of world where people will try and take the piss. And yes, they might have some good intentions, but I think it's like cutting out that noise and thinking, I spoke to someone recently, who just said, I like to go to the park and feed the squirrels. And I was like, great, we'll do more of that. And they go,
yeah.
oh, is that enough then? I was like, if that's what you enjoy, that's what you enjoy.
If it's
Like, you
enough for
don't,
you, it's enough,
yeah,
right?
like, what, you don't need to be like, oh, I need to quit my job and set up my own business. Or I need to like decide to commit to running an ultra marathon, or, something crazy. Literally the simplest things often bring us the most pleasure. But we often neglect those things or think they're not good enough because the world around us doesn't think they're acceptable.
Mm,
As someone who, I know there's people I know and I well respect and love them who are teetotal, they don't drink, but I love just going to the pub and having a couple of pints with my mates. Like, I love it. Like, it brings me loads of
yeah,
joy. Yes, I know alcohol isn't bad, but actually the connection I get, no, I don't need alcohol to have connection before anyone reads it. But I just, that the atmosphere, the environment I'm
yeah.
in, I just love
It's
it.
not just about the act.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It brings so much to my life. And with the Euro 2024 starting, I'm going to probably do that more than I usually would. But it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's just that's what I like. And I don't shame myself for that anymore.
Hmm.
Whereas probably a few years ago, I would have done thinking, well, that's not high vibe, or that's not like what the top gurus in the world are doing. Because they
Sorry,
always say like
what's
you need
high
to,
vibe?
I don't know. It's just something that I think it's more in the spiritual law of attraction stuff. Like don't lower your, don't drink alcohol because it will lower your
Oh,
vibration or all this nonsense. And
okay.
I'm like,
But then I guess so this then is a thing, isn't it? If somebody is then into that spirituality side of things and high vibe for them is something that's important,
exactly. Even though I
then
probably will take the piss out of you, yes, if it's important. It's
yeah,
like,
but
yeah,
but then it comes back to that judgment piece, isn't it? It's
yeah,
just like you
exactly.
do you.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that kind of resonate when you were saying about if someone just likes to go to the football and whatever. I'm like, yeah, because it's generally not necessarily about the football, is it?
No.
It's about that sense of belonging to something greater than yourself, the community that you're in, it's usually when we look at, well, and for me, this is how I kind of do values work with my clients in a sense of I don't give people a list of things and go, hey, pick out of this list of words what your values
Mm,
are. I'm more about tell me about things that bring you joy, tell me
mm,
about things that frustrate you, and then let's
mm.
like figure out what is it about those things
Yeah.
that is important to you, because they might be like, oh, I've got a value of, I don't know, family.
Mm,
And it's like, well, is it your family, or is
yeah.
it something about what you get from that? And we can drill a bit
Exactly.
deeper, because I always through my coach training I learned as well, values are things that you can't put in a wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
And for me I was like, oh, so I always have that now. I'm like, can I put family in a wheelbarrow? Yes I can. So what else is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Because
what's
it's,
underneath? What does it mean?
yeah, exactly. When I think about family, it's like sometimes for me, that's just connection, or it's do I just feel useful?
Yeah.
Sometimes, I like feeling useful. And actually, I'd never thought I'd quote Arnold Schwarzenegger rather than to take the piss and just say, get to the chopper. That's a really terrible Arnold Schwarzenegger accent there.
It
But
is bad.
when he said in his documentary about be useful, and I think when we can find a way to be useful and be authentic and stuff like that, we kind of that brings a lot to
Yeah.
us. That brings a lot to me. And I think, yeah, it's
Yeah, if that works for you, right?
yeah,
So that
exactly.
isn't it, that so that's the thing that resonated for you, and
Yeah,
you're like, there it is. And that might
yeah,
resonate with loads of people, and for other people it might be
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
no.
Because we can also, and I know in the professional mental health well-being space, us professionals can be a bit like evidence-based heavy, like, oh, well, we need to find the evidence for it working because ultimately we want to find what's going to help the most people. But sometimes I think we can be a bit like, well, actually, I'm not going to go to someone who turns up in my clinic and says, I've been doing this, and I'm like, well, that sounds a bit weird, but they found it helpful. I'll
Yeah.
be like, well, that's helped working for you, great. And there might be a point where it doesn't work and you might want to change that, but that's okay. And I think that's what we need to just be honest and say, it's okay to just find what works for you. Again, as long as it's not harming anyone else. And also, if we're honest, we're able to be honest with ourselves and actually ask, is this helping us, or is this just becoming an obsession, like an addiction or something like that?
Mm,
Because I think that sometimes what we think are helping it just like can become a bit addictive. And I know with the whole morning routine stuff, people can get so obsessive about it. And having routine is massively important. But sometimes we're like, oh, when I did my journaling, I did my meditation, I then jumped in the cold shower, and then 2 hours have gone by, and then I hadn't done this, and that. And you realize actually all that morning routine hadn't actually helped you get any of the stuff you wanted to get done because you're knackered doing all your morning routine. So it's like,
yeah.
we have to be honest with ourselves whether it's actually helping.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, find what works for you. Really,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
key.
That's really cool. I want to do a bit of a callback as well, because right at the very start when we were talking about happiness, you kind of threw out the name of a Dave, and then we didn't go any further than that. And I'm wondering if people were listening to that going, who was that? Because we named Jay Shetty, and
Yeah.
it's
Dave
sort of like,
James, me and Dave, yeah, so we're doing a podcast.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that was going to be my next question. Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's called Tats and Chats, and it was literally Dave reached out to me probably because we had the same inappropriate sense of humor, but we also work in the wellbeing mental health space, and we just wanted to talk about aspects of the wellbeing space, and give our opinions on it, and maybe the things we like, the things we don't like, and that's coming out on the 16th of June on Spotify and YouTube. I admit Dave's done all the work. I'm not going to take too much credit. I'm just there to add to the conversation. But it's good. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully people find it interesting. I've probably said stuff on there that I've probably changed my mind on now, but that's just life. And I think
But
that's
that's
important.
okay again,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's really important to be open.
And actually, I want to just like double hit that
Yeah,
nail on the head, because I am the same in my work too,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
everybody feels like, oh, but you work in the inclusion space. Surely, like, and I'm like, nothing's fixed.
No,
It isn't, because we only know what we know until we know something else.
exactly,
And
exactly.
it's like when I went to school, Pluto was a planet. Apparently, it isn't anymore. I'm like, even science changes its mind. Like, even
Exactly.
science learns.
Yeah,
So all
yeah,
bets are off. Like,
yeah. It's like just realize that you're probably doing the best. You probably think you know more than you realize. You do actually know, but being recognizing that you're human, actually you only know so much and there's more to be learned. We can always improve, but don't be too hard on yourself if you make a
mm,
mistake. That's important. I try and do that in my practice now. I'm like, I've in the past I've probably been quite critical of certain interventions and approaches, and then I've realized, oh, you know what, some people do find it helpful. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not helpful. So it's kind of
mm,
recognizing that. But yeah, it just be I find it quite helpful now to just not take myself too seriously.
yeah.
Mhm.
So we've got Tats and Chats that comes out on June the
The
16th. So if
16th.
people are listening to this and they're thinking, oh yeah, okay, I wanna hear a bit more of Alex's opinions on stuff because this is really resonating, that's
Yeah,
where they can come and find you
yeah,
for a bit
definitely.
more of that.
Yes.
How else can people get in touch with you if they want to connect
Just
with you?
reach out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, I actually I haven't deleted my TikTok, but I deleted the app because I was like, what am I doing spending all this time watching people talk about how they've got ADHD and stuff like that. Though, by the way, I'm not taking the mick out of people with ADHD. I do loads of assessments of that, so I'm very empathetic and compassionate towards it. But
Mm,
anyway, so yes, it's at the Alex J Williams is my handle on those 3 platforms. I'm not that active at the moment because I'm just focusing all my time on my little girl and my clinic work. But yeah, I'm very opinionated, but I do it with passion and kindness. So enjoy.
wonderful. And you mentioned as well that you do speaking as well. So if people want to
Oh
get in
yeah,
touch
yeah,
with
yeah,
you for how
yeah.
to maybe book you as a speaker.
Yeah, book me. My favorite piece of feedback I got last year, even though it was the best webinar they've ever attended. It was actually, I was told I was real. And I think, not to blow my own trumpet, but I think in the well-being space, you get people come along, do the same old stuff about affirmations, visualization, self-love, self-care. And I'm like, no, let's talk about the real stuff that people actually struggle with that is applicable to everyone. So if you want to learn essentially how to get back up when life knocks you down, whether that's just everyday failures or whether that's the big stuff, I'm your man.
And how can people connect? So they can just come and
Yeah,
find
just
you,
reach out. Yeah,
find your
reach
channels
out
and
to me
reach
on
out.
social media. I don't have a anal specific way. I try to
I
make
wondered
myself
what you were
as a
going to say then. I was like, oh,
don't
this is a new topic. It is Pride. We'll go there.
yeah. On OnlyFans, you can follow me. So no, actually, I want to be accessible. So just drop me a message on any of those platforms. I'd be more than happy to have a chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. And that's how they can find more out about you and kind of more of who you are as a person, get to a bit know
Yes.
about your story
And my
too.
personal story. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Alex Williams, it's been an absolute delight to chat to you today. Is there anything else that you came along that you wanted to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say?
No, I think I've covered it mostly. Just enjoy yourself. Literally, my main takeaway I would give to anyone right now is just if you're struggling or whatever, if you focus your energy on like have built looking after your health, good times, good people, you won't go wrong. So just keep it simple. Ignore all the noise. Just do what works for you.
Awesome. Alex Williams, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. To be honest, there's nothing amazing about any of this stuff out there anyway. You don't need to do any sensationalist stuff. Just keep
Yeah.
it simple. So
But that for me is like, I believe personally that resonates with more people
yeah,
because, coming back to that point, like we all want to feel special, we all want to be seen and understood, and I get that, but also we don't want to feel like we're so far away from every other human. So just to hear someone say all the things that I'm like probably thinking and feeling, and for someone to just go, it's all right, mate. Like,
yeah,
if you want to go and have a pint, go and have
yeah,
a pint.
yeah,
Like, if
exactly.
that makes you happy,
Yeah,
do that. If
yeah,
you're doing it every single night, all day, all night,
yeah,
maybe we need to have a look at something else. But if
exactly,
you're saying you want 5 minutes peace to yourself with a newspaper,
exactly. I
That goal.
literally, if everyone had that attitude to life, that just the world would be happier. We stop judging ourselves for the things we like and we find meaningful, and just accept them and start liking ourselves a bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
No, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure, mate.